Democracy thrives on transparency. That's why we document Irish political voices as they are, complete, unedited, and accessible to all. Subscribe to join us in strengthening public discourse.
Kowndt-Courler, Minister, the government's response to tonight's cross-party motion is extremely disappointing. I know my own party, the Labour Party, have produced volumes of legislation in terms of housing in the last couple of years, including, but not limited to, the Homeless Families Bill, our Renters' Rights Bill, and a bill to give effect to the recommendations of the Kenny report to cap the cost of development land. And Einstein's definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The fact of the matter is, with the changes to the tenant in situ, government have effectively gutted the scheme, and the changes that have been proposed in relation to RPZs are not going to stop rents going up. And under Housing for All, you have never met your targets for social and affordable housing. And government have come in here and effectively thrown renters under a bus by completely undermining housing options for young people, for students, for junior doctors, for transient and migrant workers. And this will not stop rents rising, because these people, we all know, stay in their accommodation for a fixed amount of time, and then they move on, and then the rent will be reset and it will rise and rise again. I know, Minister, you said yourself recently that rents in Ireland are way too high. I agree with you. But you have introduced measures which will only cause rents to rise higher and higher and effectively bake in upward-only rent increases. These RPZ changes will not guarantee any increase in supply in the private rented market, certainly not in my own city of Limerick. It may result in an increase in build-to-rent accommodation in Dublin, maybe some in Cork, but it certainly will not be affordable. Rents in Limerick rose by 20% last year. And the measures proposed in this motion are common sense, they're evidence-based, they're implementable, and they are emergency measures in response to a crisis which has led 15,000 people to become homeless, which is a population of a town the size of Tullamore, and an entire generation of young people locked out of any hope of owning a home in their own and trapped in their parents' box bedroom if they're lucky enough. I am one of that generation, and it's my generation who are paying the price for this, the same generation who still disproportionately bear the scars of the financial crash, and we're the first generation who are going to do worse than our parents. And this is a crisis caused primarily by poor political and policy decisions made at the behest of institutional investors and vulture funds, which have essentially screwed young people. And for 10 years, this government and the previous one have prioritised the needs of big business over ordinary people, and this is the result of that. You only have to look at the group most affected by the latest changes, students. Under these proposed changes, students, as I said, will leave their accommodation, as they invariably do every year, and they will see their rent rocket every time the tenancy changes. And they have no protections under these measures. And this genuinely begs the question to me as to what this government has against young people, because it actually feels like ideological warfare against the youth of Ireland, because as a result of this government's policies and the previous ones, young people are denied the traditional rites of passage that come with adulthood, leaving home, renting, buying a property, even starting a family. I have friends of mine who want to have children and they can't, because they're living at home with their parents and they can't bring more people into an already overcrowded home. And the concept of living a normal, independent life has literally become a fairy tale for many people in their 20s and 30s. And I feel like whenever I stand up here, or whenever anybody does and calls this out, we are literally met with pure and utter condescension. And home ownership is already out of reach for people my age. And now with these resulting changes, renting is going to be out of reach yet again. And the fact of the matter is, we are losing thousands of young people every year to London, to Sydney, to Dubai, to Perth, all over the world. And some of this, yes, undoubtedly is due to the normal rite of passage that comes with adulthood. But the problem is, once people go, they're more likely than not going to come back due to this housing crisis. And it's always young people, and it's always renters. And if it's not young people and renters, it's travellers and people from migrant backgrounds who are worst affected by this crisis. And I want to be really clear here that this housing crisis is not being caused by immigrants or immigration. It's a failure of policy and it's a failure of government. And in the time remaining to me, I want to talk about a woman who emailed my office recently. She says she gave up her own secure HAP tenancy in order to return home to care for her late mother during her terminal illness. She says, like anyone, she dropped everything to care for her mum, to become her full-time carer. And she was fully transparent with the council throughout this time. And it was her understanding that the process to add her to the rent account was underway. However, her mother then subsequently died. And despite grieving the loss of her mother, the council refused her right to succeed the tenancy under the 2-year rule, and they have now threatened her with legal notices, demanding she leave the home, threatening court action if she does not surrender the keys. And this is despite the fact that this is the home she grew up in for many years. She says she's the mother of 3 young children, including twin boys who are only 1 year old. And she has continued to pay the rent and look after the property since her mother died. And while she is actively trying to secure alternative accommodation, it's become impossible. And the only option given to her by the local authority is to present herself as homeless for emergency accommodation. She says she is on the housing list, but a suitable property is nowhere in sight. It's very clear, Minister, from what has transpired during the past week, that government is at 6s and 7s, because we have had at this stage up to 4 different contradictory and confusing announcements. Government does not know what it is doing, and by any objective measure, it is failing to prevent people entering homelessness, failing to build an adequate supply of social and affordable housing, which the Housing Commission has clearly recommended should amount to 20% of all stock. Currently, it amounts to 10%, and failing young people, and people my age in particular. And in this motion, we have presented a number of practical solutions, and even if you engaged meaningfully and took on board some of them, they would make a practical difference. I'm urging government to withdraw their amendment to this motion and to engage constructively with all of us. We have put our political differences aside to come together, and we are asking government to join us in taking collective action.
Thank you, Deputy Rory Hearn.
Liked what you saw?